Hi, everyone. It's the Catholic CEO, Henry Katarna. I'm really happy today to be joined by Steve Pokorny. He's the founder of Freedom Coaching. And it's in a very interesting topic. It's a serious topic. It's one that is very problematic in our society today. And I'm glad that, Steve, you're here. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Henry. It's an honor to be with you and your audience today.
I'm glad that you're here. I'm just going to take just a quick moment, Steve, to mention that the Catholic CEO, check us out on our website, thecatholicCEO.com, and check out our project, thecatholiceconomy.com, where we're trying to bring Catholics together to buy from each other, sell to each other, advise each other, fund each other's businesses, and at least find each other and help to create a stronger economy and possibly even resist the culture by coming together. So thecatholicEconomy.com is one of our most important projects. So thanks for that. So Steve, let's begin. Tell us maybe in a few minutes, I'm interested in your faith journey to begin with, where you are, where did you come from in the Catholic faith? But maybe you might even begin with what is the Freedom Coaching enterprise all about?
Sure. Great question, Henry. So Freedom Coaching was born in 2011 after I had a 12-year struggle with pornography, compulsion, and basically was born of a need of people asking me, you're saying you got freed from this. How do I get free? So Freedom Coaching is a one-to-one mentoring system designed to break the attraction permanently for both men and women through a transformation of mind, heart, and vision. And I like to say we get to take some of the most broken men and women of this 572,000-pound elephant in the room that virtually no one is talking about in many circles. We get to see these broken men and women really walk in genuine internal freedom. And it's a privilege and a gift.
I can see that you say it's a privilege and a gift, and it indeed is. In my own estimation, it's a serious problem, and there are many people, men and women, who are struggling with this. And so I know we're going to talk about that in great detail today. Interested in, as we begin this, where did you come from in the faith that led you to this situation and to this ministry?
Sure, great question. So I grew up, maybe it's a common story, part of it. Mom, dad, brother, didn't have a dog. We have two now. Life's great. But now this is where it differs for a lot of people. When I was 5, my father, who was a Vietnam vet, he wanted to get rich quick. And he thought the best way to do that was by betting our house in the stock market. My mother said no. My dad said, I'm going to do it anyway. He forged her signature. The deal, to his what he understood, he lost it. And so he thought the best way to provide for our family was by killing himself. He went into the garage, closed the garage door, and turned on the car engine. And 30 minutes later, when my mom pulled him out of there, his short-term memory was gone. So I grew up with my father in a nursing home, which means virtually without a father. And I know intimately the fatherless generation and world that we live in. Right? There's that great hole, like chasm in my soul was there. And so I very much had, I hated myself growing up. I remember writing in my journal, I should just kill myself, like father, like son. I felt nobody understood me. Right. And so there's there's deep darkness that's beginning to grow in me from the earliest ages. My mother would work to get me through counseling and things like that. And we grew up Catholic, but there was never really prayer in the home. We didn't pray the rosary as a family. We went on Sundays. I remember going to CCD or PSR, whichever one you want to say, and going through religious education, never really getting it right until so in fast forwarding through my life, fast forward to when I was a senior in high school, and the doctors discovered my dad had been dropping a lot of weight. And they ran some tests, and they discovered he had brain and lung cancer, and he got moved to a hospice. And I sat down in the room with him by myself, And I was just real. And I said, Dad, you left me. You walked out on Mom. You weren't there for Brian. You abandoned me. And my father, because of his condition for much of his life, he couldn't really understand him because he had kind of garbled speech. But for a brief moment, I call it a moment of grace of the Holy Spirit. His eyes kind of cleared up and he said, I know. And that was his way of saying, I'm sorry. And so for the first time in my life, Henry, I was able to start forgiving my father. And this is a big part of, I think, a lot of our journeys where we've got wounds and we've got hurts and we've got anger, especially against our own fathers. And if we don't clear that stuff up, that stuff will eat us alive. And I knew from early experience in life that if you got things to say to people, you got to say it. And so I did. And so beginning to forgive him, and then 3 weeks later, 3 feet away from him, I lost my father for a second time. Now, to understand the next part of the story and what fits more in the faith journey, go back to 6th grade was a year in which I was seven houses down from where I grew up, crossing the street, and there was a brown bag, and in that brown bag was hardcore pornography. And the hardcore pornography, I was amazed. Oh my gosh. And it was like I won the lottery. And I took it home and then I blabbed at school because I can't keep this to myself. I won the lottery. And there was another boy there who his father, because of divorce, was out of the picture to a degree. And he came over and he's just hungry for the, what the appeal was offered in this intimacy and closeness. And so he offered me $20 on the spot. And this is about 1990. That's a lot of money for a sixth grader.
Yes.
So I became a porn peddler from the time I was 12. Fast forward to the next year is when 7th grade, an infamous year, I got busted for shoplifting. My grandparents got me out of that. And this would be, that was the year in which, but it was also the year in which from another young boy who from his parents in their bedroom had pornographic videos. Okay, this is before the internet's hitting and going wild. And we would be watching his videos at his house. I'm interested, I'm intrigued, but this ugliness and the shame is growing, right? And my mother, right, had tried to raise me right, talk about faith-wise. I began to go into confession. Actually, one of the first times I tried to confess this, I confessed I fornicated. I didn't know what I was talking about. There wasn't, the religious education was lacking, especially in this area. And so I knew it was wrong. And so pretty quickly, this was beginning to grow in me. 8th grade was when confirmation came in. I knew for years that the devil existed. Because I'd seen evil in my life. I knew there was evil, but I wasn't sure about God because of the brokenness I experienced, and maybe especially with the father. And then I got confirmed within a week. All the lights came on and I knew there was a God. I knew that he was real, very much so. That would spur me on to begin doing a prayer life. But so I'm starting to become two young men. On one hand, I'm very extroverted. I'm involved with band and show choir and acting. On the other hand, there's this thing growing in the background, right? That began to stifle my soul. I started wearing sunglasses because I really don't want people to see me who I am, because I'm walking with this guilt, the shame, the self-hatred, and afraid if I really let you into this space, you wouldn't like what you see because it's really, really ugly and dark. And so so fast forward, I go to Syracuse University because I'm liking acting. But I get a call to the priesthood. I go to seminary up in Cleveland, Ohio for 4 years, 3 years undergrad, 1 year major. And pornography is everywhere, right? It's all over the place. Sexual and human formation was very much lacking there, and really trapped in this whole thing, right? I'm learning. So again, that the tale of two men being trapped here. And I discerned out of that, did one very painful year of high school teaching, and I found myself at Franciscan University. And at Franciscan University, they have these festival of praises, if anybody knows about them, they're once a month. And I heard that night from Isaiah 43:19, where behold, I'm doing something new. Do you not perceive it? And it was, and he's basically, the streams of living water will begin to flow. I had been drinking, Henry, from a septic tank for a long time. And now there's this desire for fresh water. I didn't know what to do with it. I'm going to daily mass. I'm moved with what Jesus had done in my life. And I had to make it clear, I had a devotion to our Blessed Mother. I had been going to mass pretty frequently here. But again, there's this other, I'm living as two men. But God wants us whole. And he's not going to stop, and he'll use any means whatsoever, right? Nothing is wasted. In my business, nothing is wasted. Everything is redeemable. This is what he was doing. And so 2 weeks later, after the experience at a festival of praise, I'm receiving the Eucharist, moved to what Jesus had done, praying after Mass, and then it hit me. It wasn't just Jesus. It was the Father. It was God the Father who I thought had abandoned me, had forsaken me, and left me. No. He wanted me to climb up in his lap and simply be held, to be loved, the deepest ache of my heart. And I heard for the first time, clear as a bell in my heart, you, Stephen, are my well-beloved son, in whom I'm well pleased. You're pleased with me? After all the running I've done, all the using I've done, and this is years and years of using stuff, of unchaste behavior with women. And which was fueled by pornography. God, really? Yeah, I want all of you, right? And then it happened, Henry. Boom, 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 boom. These chains hit the floor, like St. Augustine, who picked up the scriptures and read Philippians, put on Christ and make no provision for the flesh, right? There was this desire, this deep desire, this transformation, desire to want to use my sisters, to want to love and serve them. Now, I wish that was the rest of the story on that. And it lasted for about 4 months, excuse me, right? No problems whatsoever, open filter internet, blah, 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 all that stuff. How is this happening? It's amazing. It's great. Well, like Peter, who took his eyes off Jesus, I sink very quickly back in the septic tank, right? And what Jesus, and I'm like, does this discount the whole story, what he's given me? And it's like, no, he wants to get to the root. So a series of events over many years to save our time. I was led to three things. I was led to something called theophostic prayer, which is like smoke. It's deep healing prayer, which leads to smoke. The emotions we have, the painful emotions, are like smoke that lead to a fire. Then there's something called intensive trauma therapy, which was drawing and writing. It sounds scary, it's not. And it was that first time I actually dealt with the pornography use. Because if we don't actually deal with pornography use, Henry, the stuff doesn't go away. It's something in the background. We got to get this healed. And then the last piece was that of the church's beautiful vision of the human body, especially through St. John Paul the Great's theology of the body, as well as the church's beautiful vision for the body as presented in art, right? And so in this, it's a beautiful counterpoint. Again, remember, because if pornography is, once you pull out the wound, you gotta have something to go in there to fill that space. Genuine beauty, we are designed to see. And so being given this great gift here. So it's a gift of we call redeemed vision, to be able to see as God creates us to see, and in seeing we can love. So I stand before you, or sit before you as a man. I'd rather die than lust. Lust, to paraphrase C.S. Lewis, lust is a weak, whimpering, whispering thing compared to the desire that arises when lust has been killed. So that's a little bit of my story, and it's the story of Jesus Christ in my life, and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, and it's a powerful story. There's so many things I want to discuss with you about it, but thank you for telling us this all.
Sure.
So here's one area of thinking. By many measures in our society, you are a victim, right? The code word victim. You've had all these troubles and challenges, and you have risen above that. So that, and you've been pulled from it, I guess it would be another analogy. So what, you talk to men say, and it has been said, that every man remembers the very first pornographic image they saw, the very first one, whatever the medium was. And I think 99% of men would probably say that. And I only mention that as an anecdotal point because from that, the story goes that it's continuous and it's progressive, and it never ends until it ends. How would you say it ends? You've had an interesting experience. You've had a transformational experience. God's grace hit you at confirmation time, and then you had some other struggles, but you've come across this. Is there a short version of the story? What happened? What does one do? What do we do to solve this?
Sure, that's a great question, and so I'll start at the beginning and the end. We'll put them together. So the experience for a lot of men, and now an increasing number of women, is this is a lot. I won the lottery. I have this buried treasure. And when somebody finds these images, right, whether it was older generations, right, was going to go to get a magazine, a Playboy, things like that. Now it's cell phone, smartphone, right? AI pornography is on the horizon here and here now. And it's this, now I want to hide this. It's the Gollum effect. It's the precious, right?
Sure.
Well, secrets have powers, right? And especially, I'm speaking to any married man out there, your wife knows. Whether she can articulate it, she knows whether there's going on in the background, right? You got to get this stuff healed. You just do. Okay. So to boil it down, we've discovered in trial and error, the work that we've done in freedom coaching, it comes down to three areas. Number one, for lasting healing on this. Number one is identity. Who are you? Okay, true story, Henry. I didn't explain this to you, so you don't know this. So this is full out. We were supposed to have this discussion about a week ago. I was stupid and opened myself up for identity theft. Okay, and yeah, big family emergency, as I said to you here. Like, thank God, it sounds like everything's okay on that. But I did something really, really stupid, right? And I didn't realize exactly how bad this could have been. And I threatened my family by doing this, right? So here's the deal. Our sexuality, right? Who we are as male or female is intimately tied into our identity. It is our identity in a very real sense, right? And what is that all about? It's about being in the identity as a beloved son or daughter of God. There's an enemy of God who hates us and wants to do anything to tear that asunder. Right? So we first and foremost have to come back to an understanding of identity, of who we are, and to receive that and accept that, right? If there's been a brokenness along the line, all of us have brokenness, right? The term dysfunctional family is a redundant statement. Even in the Holy Family, right? 2 out of 3 are perfect. Anything goes wrong, they just look at Joseph. I'm like, Joseph, right? And he's like, whatever. Yeah. Right? But he's so surrounded by love, Henry, that that's what brings him on. He also has masculine virtue and things like that, right? So we have to come back to, who are we? Do we have this notion of sonship? Are we living from that place? And that identity piece comes to the second piece, which is intimacy. Okay, when we say the word intimacy in the cultural colloquialism of the world today, people typically think sex, right? Well, intimacy is so much more than that, right? If we do that, we're reducing that word of intimacy merely to our genitals. That's certainly one area that might happen between a husband and wife, but it's so much more. And when we reduce that, we're stealing something so profoundly beautiful. Intimacy, to use a cute phrase, is into me see. To the 4 deepest desires of the human heart, Henry, are to see and be seen, to love and be loved. How many men and women are walking around on this planet right now, in the town we're living in, doubting that they are lovable, doubting that they are good, doubting that they can do it, or for women especially, that I'm beautiful and am I worth fighting for? Right? And it has to do especially with the pornified culture we're living in, which is attacking directly this identity, our sexual identity as male or female, right? And so the healing that must come from it, and we're talking about deep healing, especially from the Lord, is a restoration of the relationship between the Father and the Trinity as well, with all 3 persons of the Trinity, with ourselves, to love and nurture ourselves and all who we are, and then also our relationships with others, starting with our father and mother, and then if there's siblings or our spouse or things like that, and then also the wider world. Those relationships are really important. And then the last piece, Henry, is that vision piece. The reason why this stuff is going on and on, it's growing more and more, it's because people are blind. They've never learned how to see the body correctly. And the solution that is offered in many cases is offer a web filtering service, or to just look away, stare at the sidewalk the rest of your life. Just look away. but we are created with eyes to see. This doesn't mean we go into a pornographic website and test our freedom. That's not what we're talking about here.
Mhm.
But what do you do? What do we do when an image is presented to us? Or we're in the summertime when we're walking around and somebody is wearing less clothes because it's hotter out. How are you seeing them? Are you seeing them as a person, or are we striving to reduce them to an object because of programming, right? So there's got to be this, what the antidote for this is genuine beauty. The church's beautiful vision of the human person, going deep and being programmed by that. And because of the brain's neuroplasticity, if we've been formed one way, as long as it's not permanent brain damage, we can be reformed in another way to see, to think, to feel differently. And when you continually fill the good stuff, if the wall of shame, of guilt, and self-hatred has been broken down, then guess what, Henry? Then we have what we need through identity, intimacy, and genuine seeing to be done with this forever. And we get to see this all the time in the work we do with freedom coaching. And it's a miracle, and it's beautiful, but it's very, very real.
It sounds like a miracle. Let's talk about, so let's say, well, men or women, there's a shame involved. There's a shame, and people are even afraid to go to confession. And, we know all of these situations. You talk about identity, intimacy, and seeing or vision. Can someone do this on their own? This is a key question. Can we do this on our own, or do we need you, freedom coaching, our priest? What's the formula for breaking this? And I know that many priests have given excellent sermons on this. They always say, you have to want to stop this. You have to actually want to stop this. So maybe I'll throw that at you and see if that resonates. But how does it get done? Can we do it ourselves, or do we have to have, all of this help, this apparatus around us to solve this?
So to quote the prophet Bono of U2, we were never meant to make it on our own, right? The key to this whole thing, I mean, again, we mentioned 3 elements here, Henry. The key here is grace. Grace, I like to translate as proverbial slogan. I don't know if slogan is the word, but the life, the love, and power of God. Okay, we were called to be utterly receptive. If we take the terms of bridegroom and bride, Jesus Christ is the bridegroom. As the body of Christ, we are bride. We propose nothing in the sight of God. We're called to receive. And as a male, we may feel kind of uncomfortable with that language because, like, I'm a man, I'm supposed to do everything. Well, we're only a male and going to live out our male bodies and our male identity to the degree that we have sonship. And remember, sonship is a given reality. It's not something we create. It's something we must receive. We must open ourselves to it, right? And I think one of the errors that, if we're in America, if we've fallen into the Protestant work ethic, in many cases, I'm going to pull myself up on my own bootstrap. I'm going to be the one to do this, right? And yes, do we have to do things? Yes, we do. No question, right? I agree with what priests would say about you have to want to do that. I agree. We would, like in the work we do in freedom coaching, we won't work with anyone who's like, I'm here just because my wife called me, or if it's a teenager, like my mom says I really should get over this stuff. I'm like, well, you're not ready yet. We want the people who are like, I've tried virtually everything. I don't know what to do. Help me get free. I want to get free. I want to be free from this, right? So from this here, it's an openness to grace, to allow God to do what he needs to do. Now, once we have, so we in freedom coaching, 3 rules we set down for every client. Number 1, it's the grace of God. 2, you've got to open yourself to that grace. And then 3, you got to respond to it. There's work involved here. Gosh, man, I wish this was magic. We could snap our fingers, pay us $10,000 and we're done. By the way, we don't charge anywhere near $10,000. But no, it's a response to grace here. And if a person will do this and then follow what is offered here, especially through first breaking through the guilt, the shame, the self-hatred, these things have to be worked through, going to Jesus Christ, allowing him to heal the wounds of the heart, and then being rebuilt again through those 3 areas of identity, intimacy, and vision. That's where your lasting healing comes in. But it is a process. And I think this is to no fault of their own necessarily, priests. the running joke in our organization is, what we hear in confession is after somebody confesses they've been using pornography, pray in Our Father and 3 Hail Marys. It's great. It's wonderful. Don't stop praying those. But if we know anything at all, just to start with the brain chemicals, just praying those individual prayers, for a vast majority of people, it's not enough. The stuff's too powerful. So we have to cooperate with those prayers. And there's a rebuilding of the human person that has to happen.
It's such a powerful story. There's so many questions. If men, let's talk about men first, and we'll talk about women in a moment, but let's say men are, they've reached this point where they know that it's time to stop this. This is dangerous. This is bad. This is not good. This is, there's a sewer pipe coming into the living room type of analogy. What do they do then? If they go to the group? Do they go to, do they go to counseling? Do they go, what's the prayer? And then talk about that as well, Steve. Where does prayer come into this? Because an Our Father and 3 Hail Marys may not solve the issue. It's a good habit to get into, of course, but what's the how-to? What's the how-to of this?
Sure. So the work that we do specifically at Freedom Coaching, we're a one-to-one mentoring system. So we want to work, we want to work one-to-one. And again, it's no, I don't want to dig on any 12-step group. Okay. I want to make it very clear. 12-step does have its place, right? It has, there's accountability. There is fellowship that is needed there. But what we end up finding, because we get a lot of people coming from 12 steps. I've tried it. I've been there for years. I can't get free. It's like the blind leading the blind in many cases, or the broken leading the broken. And again, all of us are broken in many ways. And for whatever reason, God likes that. He wants us to participate in that. But if people don't know how to actually solve the problem, then it's just advice. Right. And again, think about it. Who are we talking with? This podcast is dedicated especially to CEOs. CEOs at the end of the day, what do we want? We want to solve the problem. How do we solve the problem? Right. We've got water coming into the ship. How do we put the plugs in? Right. So and we at Freedom Coaching, we don't have a desire to meet with a client the rest of their life. I know that's heartbreaking, right? We want to solve the problem there. Right. So where does prayer fit in this? So again, the vast majority of people that we're talking to, and it's not just Catholics, but a vast majority of them are Catholics, right? So they've been around this, right? They have a devotion to our Blessed Mother. They go to frequent confession. They're involved with the sacraments, receiving the Eucharist. Many times, though, if there is shame, guilt, and self-hatred, if that stuff is blocking us, then the good stuff, what we just mentioned, it's hard to penetrate in there. Right. So we must first break through that. And so there's a work through going through the history of someone, their historical, especially broken sexuality, broken experiences they had, their unchaste behavior, looking specifically at the emotions, what was there. It's interesting. That actually opens the door. Then we bring them to Jesus, the chief psychologist, in a specific way. He does healing there, and that begins there. Once we get to, again, it's 4 stages. Intimacy and identity is the third stage. It's there we start to teach them how to really pray. And we come from this is the beauty of Catholicism in this. What we want to do here, Henry, is we like to teach from the philosophy of Saint Therese. Saint Therese was with the little flower, is the little flower, I should say. She's more alive than we are. And it wasn't so much speaking or even listening, it was being. It was being in the presence of love and being loved. And I don't know about you, but for a lot of my life, it was, and again, this is the type A personality that I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to do this all. I'm, right? And when we're in relation to God, that's not how it starts out by any means. It's you. What do you want to do with me? How? And it comes back to that bridegroom bride analogy, which is more than just analogy. It's a reality. He wants to woo us. When is the last time, ask yourself, right, that you've actually been wooed? Right? I think many of us, and I think this is where our evangelical brothers and sisters have a leg up on us. And because there's a lot of discussion of it being a romance versus a religion, where in reality, Catholicism is the most profound romance of all. And yes, it is a religion, yes, but it's like entering into the bridal chamber. You have the candles and you have the incense and you have the bells and you have the shadow, the appropriate shadows, shall we say, of entering into it. There's something mysterious and transcendent going on. We've forgotten that. And I think if we've simply turned it into, this is something that I do, instead of allowing the one who loves me to penetrate into the deepest recesses of my heart, then we're not going to be able to break through to the other side of where we want to be, of being loved, so that we can love others in a chaste way.
Mm-hmm. And so you've talked a lot, Steve, about intimacy and love. And I guess that's what's missing when we fall into this trap.
Yeah.
And if that's what's missing, you're saying first go to God the Father, go to the Trinity. And then you've spoken a few minutes ago about others in our lives. You've said that a wife often knows, or probably always knows, what's going on. Mm-hmm. So how do you're speaking about how you repair intimacy with God, and that's the openness to grace. What about the people that have been hurt or damaged by this? How do we repair that intimacy? Is that the next step?
Oh, it's such a great question. It's also such an important part of this aspect, right? We were never created, as we said, never created to make it on our own. We were made for communion with others, right? We were made from love, to live in love, to go back to love. And a major part of that, right? If I'll go back to my philosophical root days, right? Jean-Paul Sartre was famous of saying, French phenomenologist, who I think phenomenologist, I'm going to be called in my philosophy degree in a second. He said, hell is the other. Well, that's actually what the mantra of hell is, right there, of saying that the other is the problem. No, in reality, the other is where we encounter God, right? If we remember at the end of Les Mis, right? Take my hand, I'll lead you to salvation. I would sing it here, but I'll save your ears here, Henry, right? To see the face of God is to see another person, and vice versa, right? So in this, there's been a what opens us up for, if we take a step back, or maybe 5 step backs, and think through, like, we can take any sort of compulsion, right, of pornography or alcohol or other drugs. Why do people get in that in the first place? Is because there's been a brokenness of relationship, and then they're trying to fill a genuine need with something that can never satisfy it. It's the proverbial, there's a hole in the heart, or if the hole in the heart is a circle and we're trying to shove a bigger triangle into it, it ain't gonna work, right? So in this here, the way in which to repair this deeper is moving forward, is to enter into relationships. The problem, one of the big problems we see, twofold with broken sexuality. One is the shame. Shame tells us we're not good. We're not a good person. We're irredeemable. Your life is forfeit. And if we're walking around believing that, or hearing that somewhere here, right, which is reinforced through unchaste behavior, we begin to project this onto other people, right? If I show you who I am, you'll reject me, right? Very painful place to be. I was there for a long time. And truth be told, I mentioned earlier part of my story, that place of rejection is something, even as recent as last November, I was still working through, right? So there's more here God always wants for us, right? And if we're saying that this person is going to reject me, then I'm going to keep people at a bay. I'm not going to really let them in, right? Maybe we're a CEO of our company, right? We're a really good manager, or maybe a good delegator of tasks. But to let people into our interior world, oh, that's a little too scary. Whereas what we're finding is, the most successful leaders, appropriately so, lead from weakness. They let their stuff come in. Like I mentioned about my identity theft thing. That was really stupid. Okay. But remember, God is using that as part of my story now to call other people, like, yeah, don't open yourself up to identity theft. But in what other ways are you opening yourself up as getting your true identity stolen? And are you willing to get that back? So going forward from that, then the other problem, that big problem that pornography does, pornography use, unchaste behavior, kills our ability for empathy. And I want to make this clear, Henry. There's two virtues I believe we need more than ever in our world today. One is courage to do what I should be doing, even if it feels uncomfortable, okay? Even if I'm afraid. And then second is empathy is number two. This is the ability to enter into the world of where other people are, to feel what they're feeling, and then be able to respond from that place. Pornography, unchaste behavior, because it is killing off our own emotions and trapping us in guilt, shame, and self-hatred, then I can't relate with people. I can't connect with people. Well, how the heck are we supposed to form genuine relationships and friendship if we can't feel where they're coming from, right? And again, it's that place that if I take this mask down, you won't like who I am. So that's why first and foremost, this relationship with God's got to be there, because he receives us fully. But then from here, now then the long way forward, let's say, for instance, I got a client who's coming in, his marriage is on the rock. I mean, I think in the past 2 weeks, I've had one guy was getting kicked out of his house. Another guy says, I have destroyed marriages and families. I need help from this. And he's a guy in his 60s, right? So moving forward from this, right, whether those marriages are ever repaired or restored, right? But we've seen those restored, which are beautiful. They still had the opportunity to go to those people in getting their wounds healed. You know what? I know our marriage has been deeply wounded. Would you forgive me? Just asking that question is so powerful. And I think that's why the coaching model, asking powerful questions, just like you're doing with this interview, Henry, right? Powerful questions open up new horizons that God is going to operate if we'll allow God grace to work there. So yes, we have to, long story short, Henry, we do have to work on getting these relationships healed, but it comes back to, we got to feel more comfortable in our own skin, and we've got to be able to restore empathy in us. That's going to allow us to connect with others, to create bonds of intimacy. And I encourage others in the homework assignment for those who are listening to this, go to the Catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraph 2332. What is sexuality and what does it do for us, right? Sit with that. There's a profound wisdom there.
Yeah. So Steve, we're accused in our society, or there's a sentiment out there that there's a feminization, there's a demasculization, if we could call it that, going on. Men are in many ways, in all images, movies, common sort of stories, mocked for, they're always shown as weak and foolish or stupid, even in some cases. You're talking about a vulnerability. We need to show vulnerability in order to come through this and to solve this. And it's a humility. It's a form of humility. Yes. But I guess my question is, but it's not weakness. It's not feminization in the sense of the proper sense of that word. And it leads to courage. So is it, in the corporate world, we hear servant leadership, and very few CEOs in the secular world actually talk like that, because they don't, I would say most people don't believe that that's the way to do it. It's you got to show decisive, manly leadership or courageous leadership. Men and women executives will say the same thing, but you're speaking about a vulnerability. You restore the relationship with God the Father and that spousal analogy that you talked about with the church. Is it enough to show the vulnerability? Let's say you go to the spouse and somebody goes to the spouse and they're rejected, or they go to others that they've hurt through this, even their own family, and they're rejected. What then?
Okay, so this is, we could do a whole podcast on the issue of vulnerability, right? So I'll try to keep this as succinct as we can, right? I encourage others, again, she's in the secular world, but Brene Brown, this is a big aspect of the work that she does. But if we're gonna take a very Catholic perspective on this, think of who Christ is. I am meek and humble of heart. Come, take my yoke on me. My burden is easy. My yoke is light. The June is dedicated to the Sacred Heart of the one who is humility. And right now, What's the opposite is seemingly reigning, that of pride and all the different elements of that LMNOP agenda and all that, right? And especially pornography is attached to this, right? Well, the way forward from this is the answer of our Blessed Mother, right? Who acknowledged who she was. True humility is acknowledging who you are in the sight of God, right? For her, all generations will call her blessed, not of what she's done, but for what God has done in and through her. And she doesn't apologize for it, right?
No, the
So
Magnificat, right? The Magnificat.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, Luke 2 right there, the Magnificat. Yeah, and she's the model for all Christians here. So in here, so we've got to get the definitions correct here, or the understandings correct. When we say vulnerability in a Christian perspective, this does not mean weakness, right? It means an openness to grace to do his will in and through us. This is how we go to heaven here. But many of us, especially because if we're CEOs or business owners, we've had to fight for this, right? We gotta make it happen. We've had to do business deals and mergers. We've had to risk some things out there, and we've also, I know, like, nobody gets to the height of an organization without rejection. It's all the time, right? If you're making cold calls,
Sure.
But again, remember, did that first hang up, or the 10th hang up, or the 100th hang up stop you from doing what you're doing? No, it's because you knew why you were doing what you're doing. So in the sense, let's bring this down here, and Henry, let's make it very practical, right? A man is finally getting a little humility. He's wising up. I've got an issue with pornography, and I know this gulf, this space between my wife and I is growing. This dearth of intimacy is happening. And I know because I'm at fault, because I viewed her as an object. I haven't respected her. I haven't listened to her. I haven't been present to her. And I know this shame is killing my heart, and it's killing the heart of my wife and the heart of our marriage, right? So if I go to her and I open this up, might she say, oh my gosh, what have you done, right? Could there be an apparent rejection or real rejection? Yes, it's very possible, right? Is that going to hurt? Yes, it is. But remember what Christ did on the cross. Again, Christ never sinned, so obviously don't miss the analogy here. But he's on the cross, he's suffering. He's saying with his body, this is my body given up for you. I'm going to love, and you might reject me, right? So in marriage, right, especially the sacrament of marriage, little catechesis on this, right? We believe that all sacraments, they heal, they elevate, and they perfect. We are called in our marriages. So this is a conversation just directly to those who are spouses, men and women, husbands and wives, right? We're called to open this up here in a safe space here. And again, if we've been lying to our wives, right? Speaking to the gentleman here, and that's what we do when we use pornography, because it's adultery. What happens here is that very much can be the slap across the face, and maybe a rejection, right? But the way to healing is not to run from it or hide or stuff it. We've got to open it up. And after that initial shock here, if we come from the place of utter humility, I've done this. I am a sinner. I am sincerely apologizing here. And I have a way forward that I want to go get this healed. I know that I need healing, and I'm going to go seek genuine healing. And whether it's freedom coaching or whether it's somewhere else, great, go get that. But the way forward is not to hide it, right? The way forward is to open it up in a safe place here. And from here, then you're going to remember, trust is earned. So there's been a brokenness and a violation of trust. So it's going to take some time, some backpedaling, and maybe some heavy of eating crow, maybe for a while, that this can happen. But again, I encourage all of those to go to our website, look at our testimonies. On one of there is a wife of one client that we have, who I think it was within 2 to 3 months. She's like, "You've given me my husband back. I've gotten him back. He's coming back online." So I mean, this is the beauty of our faith, and this is the message that we need to proclaim even more in the world we have. The things that we do are not who we are. Yes, we do some stupid things. We open ourselves up to identity theft, right? But Christ has come to restore this identity in us as sons in the Son, sons of the Father, so that we can love as he loves, not because it's merely a model, but because his power is living within us. And that, my brothers and sisters, in the sacrament can restore it, can heal it. We've seen those on the verge of divorce go to absolute reconciliation. Is there a lot of death that's going to happen individually and together? Yes, there is. But remember, after Good Friday comes Easter Sunday and chocolate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Chocolate,
There's
yeah.
healing. There's healing here.
One of the most powerful points you've made in the last couple of moments is that we don't identify by our faults and our sins. We are not that. We're different from that, and that's something that's important for us to remember. I'd like to turn the discussion, Steve, to the women who, it is said that men are visual, and so men respond to visual images, whether they are in pictorial form or in real life. And women, it is said, are emotional, and they respond to tugs of the heart rather than necessarily physical imagery, although that's part of it. Is everything you've said applicable to women in any audience, this audience or others? Is it applicable in the same way, or would you make any changes in the analogies?
Sure. What I would say here, I would say distinctions. Okay. Both men and women are visual. Both men and women are emotional. Okay. I want to make that very clear. But you see, part of the way a woman's brain is structured. Okay. And whether you have a different kind of structured brain doesn't make a person less male or less female, right? They're just different structures. But in women, there's something called the corpus. Every male and female have corpus callosum. There's 40% more connective tissue between the left and right hemispheres, the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system in women. They put things together much more. Henry, you and I, we have a nothing box. We love the nothing box. We go into the nothing box, we stay there all day because it's fun and we do nothing in there. Women have no idea and it drives us crazy, right?
Yeah.
You don't know what I'm talking about, go look up men's brains, women's brains on YouTube. So
good homework for us all.
Yep, it's fantastic. So from here, right? So whereas yes, women do have visuals, but it's not just visuals, right? Men because we are able, we're much more laser focused and much more narrowed in many other things. It seems like we're only there, only on the visuals, and this is why for some men, not all men, have trouble getting access to their hearts, to their emotions, and to be able to articulate those emotions. So what this is to skill up. Okay. Now what's interesting is Vicki Thorne brought this to my attention. She passed away recently she's the founder of Project Rachel, which helps with post-abortive women.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things she said was of women, when they see it during a time in their cycle where they're not ovulating, they see pornography, it's just dirty pictures. But when they've seen it during ovulation, there can be arousal attached to that. And then after that initial programming, in any other time in their cycle, this can lead them to remember this. Because if you take a memory and connect it with an emotion, it can be burned into our brain and we can remember it forever unless it gets changed and healed. So this is a call for both men and women in responding to grace to skill up in especially on how do we grow in intimacy, how do we grow in our identity as brothers and sisters, in being loved by God and by others, and then to reciprocate that.
Powerful, powerful. Let's talk, Steve, about children. Teenagers, young boys, I suppose young girls. A parent suddenly realizes their son or their daughter is accessing images, or they're acting out in a certain way. What do we do there?
Sure, great question, and this question hurts my heart because we get these responses from parents coming in. Very recently, a 16-year-old kid came in, and we don't work with children. I'll call them under 18, unless we have permission from the parents. And this one was too afraid to share with his parents for whatever reason. And I hope he finds the healing he needs. But the average age of exposure is between 8 and 11 years of age. We know of one that was in therapy at age 6. So this stuff is not going away. It is ever present. It is found there's so much pornification in so many common movies. I know the Barbie trailer recently had some pornified language in there that's being marketed to children, right? And it's more and more, and this is grooming. That is literally what's going on. Not to just mention the LMNOP agenda, all those things that are going on here. So the most important thing is, if you first find out your child has some sort of exposure to this, don't shame them, right? You're coming from a place of love and understanding, right? I'm not here to shame you. I'm here to walk with you. But with that said, this is serious. This stuff does not go away. It has to be dealt with. It has to be worked through, right? All the elements that we've talked about here are very important. So, and I think there's a lot of parents today, because they've tasted the proverbial forbidden fruit, or they've eaten, an entire apple pie or more from that tree, then they think, if I say anything here, I'm a hypocrite. Well, guess what? We're all hypocrites. I'm a total hypocrite because I'm a sinner, right? But just because we're hypocrites does not undercut the fact that the truth is the truth is the truth. And speaking the truth in love brings us freedom, and brings freedom to others, right? There's a reason why I'm able to speak about a very painful issue, a very hidden sin publicly, because I've been set free. And in doing this, my hope is never to shame someone, but to call them to freedom. So in your own home, if you find out this is going on here, right, you are the primary educators in faith and morality, especially sexual morality. You must talk about this in age appropriate ways, right? So there's lots of resources. You can shoot me a message. There's lots of different ways to be able to address this as parents, but you must do it. And it's not a one and done conversation. Come on, if and when you had the conversation with your parents about sex when you're growing up, if it was a one and done, did it help you? Did it change the course of your trajectory? Or instead, did you go and dive into the septic tank, and then you had to deal with the ramifications of it? So that maybe mean, you've got your own wounds to work on. If you're dealing with pornography yourself or unchaste behavior, this has got to be healed, dealt with, right? This stuff doesn't go away. And we're talking on the spiritual line, there may be bloodline stuff that needs to be healed, has to be cleansed, this stuff, because ultimately we're dealing with a battle between good and evil, angels and demons. This is very real, and demonic warfare is very real in the work we're doing. And it wants nothing but to cut down your children, starting in many cases with their sexuality, right? But the good news is the truth always liberates. The truth always sets us free if we are predisposed to it. And children want to hear from their parents, from their father and mother. What is the truth about my body? What is the truth about these erotic longings and desires that are coming up here? What is God's plan for my life and my vocation, right? Having these conversations, continual conversations. And again, here's an easy starting point of this. Ready? Here we go. 5 days a week, minimum, have dinner together. I know this is hard because we're CEOs, we're busy, right? You got to do it, because you don't live to work. You work to live, and your family comes first. Get the hierarchy down. Get God, spouse, child, everything else. Yeah. That's a beautiful way. And what happens is, when we establish these family dinners, what happens is it begins to create trust, an atmosphere of trust, so that when these questions come up, oh, so-and-so said this in school. Well, what'd they say? Well, it was kind of, and I'm going to translate, pornified language. What does that mean? Hey, how'd that make you feel? What do you think Jesus would say about that, right? And ask questions, probing interesting questions, right? And not from a place of condemnation, but really to get them talking. Ask. Because remember, if we're striving to live as Catholics, the Holy Spirit's going to be involved there, and the Holy Spirit's going to guide you to be able to speak on this, and also start speaking to their heart and convict them here, not just of their sin, but the fact that I want to follow virtue. And this, my brothers and sisters, is the seeds of how we reclaim the culture for Christ.
Absolutely. So let's take another quick case. College age students, young adults, left the home, perhaps working at school, whatever. Parents, it's a delicate matter. Parents don't want to interfere. They're adults now. They're doing their own thing, but they're not mature fully. They don't understand all of the subtleties of life like maybe the parents do. What do we do in that situation as parents when we have college age kids? We see them actually fornicating, you could say, on campus and doing things that are that we would, of course, not want them to do.
Yeah, so a couple, let's approach this from a couple angles. Number one, the reason why people go to college, if we're picking college, for instance, the reason why people go to college is not to get a degree. It's to get drunk and get laid. Let's make it clear. And if we untwist those lies, it's about get drunk is the Eucharist and get laid is get married, right? Those are there. So, and you can only drink from those septic tanks long enough till you start throwing up. And there's a lot of vomiting going on college campuses. Pardon to make this very visceral and real, but let's get real, right? So your call here is an invitation. Obviously, and first and foremost, it comes from our own life and how we are living our life. Are we a joyful Catholic? Are we showing the beauty of this, right? And easy thing I also heard here, beauty convicts. So outside the room, let's say they're coming home for summer, it's summertime, get an image of beautiful artwork, put it right outside their door. They walk out the door, bam, there's Our Lady Guadalupe, right? These are sacramentals, right? There's a power, get them blessed, right? And get some blessed salt in their room, right? You're gonna nuke them with spiritual napalm. Okay, we're going to war here, right?
Yeah.
And then you're going to pray your butt off like St. Monica did for St. Augustine, who was carousing and all those things, right? But what happened here, right? Stay the course here. God's working through these things, right? And also let's ask some questions. Were you perfect during those times, right? And not to say a hypocrite, but you found your way back. Obviously, ideally, we want to save them from the pain here. So if we know an error is going on, ask for the grace for the time, space, place, and way to communicate the message here. Not of a finger wagging, but a call and invitation. And it might be through, hey, I heard this great talk by Steve Pokorny, his interview, give it to him, right? Things like that, or another great Catholic speaker on these things. There's lots of options out there. Hey, would you listen to this? Or, hey, I'm going to give you $20 if you write me a one-page report on this. All kids are looking for money in college. It's a way through
revenue,
it, right?
Revenue source. Yeah. Well, so Steve, then let's talk about another area that, we've all heard great sermons on this, techniques. So, put your cell phone in the kitchen drawer at night, shut off the Wi-Fi at the house at 9 o'clock or something. Excuse me. Flee, if you're tempted, flee, get up, move, go away, go outside, go for a walk, run on the treadmill, whatever. What about all of that? Is that part? I mean, it seems like it's part of it, yes, but what's the comparative value, I might say, between that and all the richness of what you've just told us?
Sure. So all of those things that we're talking that you brought up there, those are forms of coping mechanisms. Is there a coping mechanisms don't change the heart? Now, let's make it very clear though, Henry. Mm-hmm. Is there a time and space for coping mechanisms? Do we use those along the way to get people to the interior freedom of mind, heart, and vision? Yes, we do. Right. So let's make it very, very clear. We teach something called fire alarm, and I'll try to make this extremely quickly here. 3-part process. If you are literally on fire, what's the first thing you had to do? Stop, drop, and roll. So number 1, move, get up, change your position. Right. This is if you're being tempted. Number 2 is get into the position of cruciform. It's very hard to do anything unchaste when you're in this position, right? And don't move from that position till things shift, which means you got to work through the thoughts. What am I thinking? Do a deliverance prayer here, right? We're dealing with demons who want to shut us down here. And then we got to go into the heart here. We got to work through the emotions, right? By the way, here's an easy one. If you're ever angry, start in a really angry voice, say bubbles. I dare you. It's not going to work well for you. Okay.
That's homework for us all. Good one.
Exactly. But then we want to go to name the emotion. What is the emotion I'm dealing with here? And then moving into that, as you're in this position, gratitude. Name 5 pieces of gratitude. You can't be grateful and upset at the same time, or grateful and aroused, right? Really grateful. Gratitude is the heart of who we are as human beings. And so when emotions start to shift, then things can calm down. And then that leads to the 3rd part of the fire alarm, a specific action. Because we could have lots of ideas. pick something objectively good and do it now. So let's say, for instance, right, I was heading towards my smartphone to go to not Steubenville. And then I remember, okay, I got to work through these emotions. I get up and I'm getting a cruciform and I'm working through the thoughts and emotions. Things have calmed down. I got to go for a run. Phone down, out the door, right? So that would be a practical thing here as a starting point, shall we say, to deal with those thoughts and emotions. But in the meantime, there's the hard work of working through some of that trauma. There's a hard work of responding to grace to have the identity, the intimacy, and the vision restored.
You've covered so many powerful aspects of this topic. We could go on. We could spend another hour on this easily. I'd like to ask you, as we kind of come to the natural end of our discussion today, Steve, what do you do? Do you have talks? Do you have one-on-one coaching and mentoring, as you said? Do you go around the country visiting groups, parishes, and so on? Where do we find you? Do you have books and publications? Tell us all about that, because so many, I think, need to hear and understand what you can offer.
Sure. Thanks. And Henry, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been a beautiful time to share. First and foremost, head over to our website, freedom-coaching.net. There you can find all about the work we're doing. You'll find out more about Freedom Coaching. If you're ready to start, there's an application you can put in. I'm the author of a book called Redeemed Vision. Came out in 2017, but it is still extremely timely for this. A game plan going deep into that, and connected to this is our podcast. We put out a lot of podcast guests and going deep into these, a lot of the themes of redemption, redemption in many cases, not just from broken sexuality, but a lot of different areas of redemption. We also once a month, we do something called Redeemed Healing, and there's no cost for this, where we do an online healing session with various people. I'm one of the people who prays with people, and there's a lot of healings that happen through that. And if you are unformed, if you've heard about formed,
yes,
beautiful. So if you're at a parish that's formed, it's free to you. There's a study guide that goes along with this. There's a 12-part series called Redeeming Our Vision. I'm the host of this, that basically walks through it. It's great for individuals. It's great for marriages and families. It's great for priests, especially learn for parishes. And how do we address the pornified culture? How do we find some lasting answers on this? So a lot of themes we talked about go way more in depth, and the book goes even more in depth than the series here. And then our hope is that we're able to create ambassadors for this. So if you know of priests, if you're in a parish that you think your priest would be open to receiving cards, even a free copy of our book, let us know. I'll be happy to get that out to them, to get them to preach on this. Because once you start restoring men and women in the parish, they start to come back living in the parish. This is how our parishes start to bloom instead of die. And then this is how we begin to take back our culture, because it's not guns or food that's ultimately going to save us. It is going to be strong Catholic communities founded on strong marriages and families that are going to pave the way to the transformation of culture and society.
And it's so, what you've said is so wonderful in the sense of, resisting the culture or transforming it. I love that you ended on that, because that's to link it to the Catholic CEO. That's what we're trying to do as well. But in the work that you do in the world that you live in, it's a powerful testament. It's something that I think people, we really resonate with that. We respond to it because we want to change the culture. That's what we're supposed to do. That's the Great Commission. And so we want to do that. So thank you again, Steve, for that. So we're going to put all of this information that you have in the show notes. We're going to make sure that it's there for us. And I'd like to say, God bless you and your work, Steve. You've been a very helpful along this journey that we had today. We can do a lot more, and hopefully we can have you come back sometime. So thank you very much. God bless, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, Henry. An honor, and God bless you.
You're very welcome. So thanks, everyone. It's Henry Katarna, the Catholic CEO. Our guest has been Steve Pokorny, the founder of Freedom Coaching. Very important work that Steve does, and so that you would pray for him and that you would support him in his ministry. God bless, and we'll see you all again.